Tunde and Emeka had been best friends since childhood, growing up side by side in the small Nigerian town of Odede. Tunde was the son of one of the wealthiest businessmen in town, accustomed to the luxuries that money could buy. His home was a large, gated estate with beautiful gardens and a house filled with the finest furniture and art. Emeka, on the other hand, came from a humble background. His father worked as a carpenter, and his mother sold vegetables in the local market to support the family. Despite their differences in status, the boys shared a bond that seemed unbreakable, united by their love for adventure and a curiosity about the world around them. Their friendship was built on laughter, shared dreams, and a mutual respect that overlooked their contrasting lifestyles. But as they grew older, the differences became more apparent. Tunde was always dressed in the latest fashions, while Emeka wore his school uniform until it was nearly threadbare. Tunde had dreams of following in his father's footsteps in business, while Emeka simply hoped to one day earn enough to take care of his family. These differences didn't shake their bond, though. Instead, they sparked endless conversations about what made someone truly successful, and, more importantly, what it meant to be truly happy. Odede was a quaint, peaceful town nestled between rolling hills and vast fields. Its people were as vibrant and warm as the African sun that bathed their land each morning. Farmers, artisans, traders, and shop owners filled the streets, each contributing to the town's modest economy. Life in Odede moved at a gentle pace, where everyone knew each other's names and families looked out for one another. Despite its simplicity, the town had a charm that held the hearts of its residents. Its scenic landscapes and close-knit community made Odede feel like a world of its own. For Tunde and Emeka, Odede was the ideal playground, and they often explored its nooks and crannies together. They climbed the mango trees, chased goats through the market square, and dared each other to swim in the nearby river. Each street and corner held a memory, and they could hardly imagine a life away from it. Yet, with every adventure, their conversations turned to dreams beyond Odede, to ambitions that seemed larger than their small town. While Emeka felt a deep connection to his roots in Odede, Tunde was more captivated by the possibilities of a life filled with wealth and luxury. Tunde's life was one of privilege and ease, a world where any wish could be granted with a word to his father. His house was filled with books, games, and every gadget he could wish for. Each morning, his family sat down to a breakfast that could rival a feast, with imported fruits, fresh bread, and rich coffee. Tunde's father was a respected figure in Odede, and he made sure his family had every comfort that money could buy. Tunde knew he was lucky, yet, to him, this life was simply what he had always known. It was his normal. But as Tunde grew closer to Emeka, he became increasingly aware of his own privilege. Emeka's stories of having to ration food at home, or wearing his older brother's hand-me-downs, made Tunde realize just how different their worlds were. He felt a pang of discomfort whenever Emeka tried to hide the worn-out soles of his shoes or declined an invitation to dinner, embarrassed by his own family's modest lifestyle. Slowly, Tunde's perspective began to shift, and he started to wonder if happiness and fulfillment might require more than the comforts of wealth. Emeka's home was small and crowded, with mismatched furniture and walls worn thin from years of weather and use. His parents worked tirelessly to make ends meet, and every penny they earned went toward keeping food on the table and a roof over their heads. Emeka admired his parents deeply. They were resilient and hardworking, finding happiness in each other and their children despite the endless demands of life. Emeka often joined his mother at the market, helping her sell vegetables and greeting familiar faces who always stopped to chat and bargain. Yet Emeka never felt poor in spirit. Though money was tight, his home was filled with laughter and warmth. His parents instilled in him a sense of gratitude and strength, teaching him that wealth was not measured in possessions but in kindness and relationships. Emeka was proud of who he was and where he came from, even though he sometimes wished he could give his family more. He admired Tunde's lifestyle but knew that the joy he found in his own family was worth more than any riches Odede could offer. Despite the stark differences between them, Tunde and Emeka's friendship flourished. Emeka admired Tunde's boldness and confidence, traits that sometimes seemed like superpowers in his own humbler life. Tund, meanwhile, was fascinated by Emeka's resilience and humility, qualities he was rarely exposed to in his wealthy social circle. Together they shared stories, exchanged secrets, and dared each other to dream. No matter how different their backgrounds were, they found joy in their shared experiences, often laughing at the absurdity of their contrasting worlds. It was one evening after a long day of exploring that the boys sat on a hill overlooking Odede, their conversations turning philosophical. "Do you think we'll ever know what it means to be truly rich?" Emeka asked, watching the sunset paint the sky. Tund chuckled, yet there was a trace of thoughtfulness in his eyes. "Maybe," he replied. "Or maybe we already know, but just can't see it yet." And with that, they made a pact to discover together what true wealth and happiness really meant, a journey that would test their friendship and reshape their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. This is quite a large-scale story project, with 60 chapters each containing about 300 words. Given the significant scope, I'll proceed by providing the next few chapters in detail. Then, if the direction and tone are as you'd like, I can continue building the full story in stages. One afternoon, as Tund and Emeka wandered through the town, their conversation turned to the age-old debate of money versus happiness. Tund, accustomed to wealth, argued that financial success made life smoother, opening doors to opportunities and comforts. Emeka disagreed, firmly believing that wealth lay not in possessions but in a life filled with purpose, family, and love. The debate grew heated, with both boys insisting their perspective was the right one. To settle it, they decided on a challenge. Each would try to live by the other's definition of wealth for a month, and at the end, they'd see who was truly rich. The challenge excited them, and they set some ground rules to keep it fair. Tund would live more modestly, learning to do without many of the luxuries he took for granted, while Emeka would strive to experience the perks of financial comfort. Emeka had to save up a bit first, which added to the anticipation. They sealed the deal with a handshake, unaware of just how much this challenge would change them. That night, both boys lay awake, wondering what the next few weeks would bring and hoping their friendship would survive this test. The next day, Emeka began his journey by joining Tund's family for an outing at a high-end restaurant in town. It was his first time dining in such a place, and he felt a mix of excitement and unease as he looked around at the lavish decor and elegantly dressed patrons. Tund, used to these surroundings, noticed Emeka's wide-eyed wonder and encouraged him to order whatever he liked. Emeka hesitated, feeling the cost was too much, but eventually, he let himself enjoy the experience, marveling at flavors he'd never tasted before. Meanwhile, Tund faced a different kind of challenge. He joined Emeka's family for dinner, sharing a simple meal of rice and stew in their modest kitchen. The warmth in Emeka's family was undeniable. They laughed, told stories, and included Tund in their conversation as if he were one of their own. It was a stark contrast to the often silent dinners at his own house, and for the first time, Tund began to question what he'd always believed about wealth. As they finished the meal, he realized that Emeka's family possessed a richness that money couldn't buy. As part of the challenge, Tund agreed to help Emeka's family sell vegetables at the market. The experience was a complete departure from his life of comfort. He was tasked with setting up the stall, bargaining with customers, and enduring the heat of the sun. Initially, he felt out of place and self-conscious, but Emeka's mother was patient, guiding him through the work with kindness. Tund noticed how she engaged with each customer, greeting them warmly and asking about their families, creating bonds of loyalty and trust. At the end of the day, Tund was exhausted, his clothes dusty and his voice hoarse from calling out prices. Yet, he felt a sense of accomplishment he hadn't expected. Emeka noticed the change in him, seeing his friend's growing appreciation for the hard work that went into his family's livelihood. In this brief moment, Tund began to understand that wealth didn't only come from money. It also grew from the respect and community that Emeka's family had built around them. As Emeka continued experiencing Tund's lifestyle, he attended a gala hosted by Tund's father. The event was dazzling, with guests dressed in designer clothes and waiters serving exquisite appetizers. Emeka was awestruck, but he felt somewhat out of place amidst the refined crowd. Tunde encouraged him to mingle, and Emeka found himself talking to people who owned companies and traveled the world. They spoke of investments and vacations that seemed like fantasies to him, a world where money could open almost any door. Yet, as the night wore on, Emeka felt a strange emptiness in the air, noticing that many conversations revolved around status and competition rather than connection. He realized that while these people had material wealth, they seemed distant and disconnected. It was a revelation for Emeka, who valued close relationships over material gain. Despite the allure of luxury, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing from this lifestyle. Emeka left the gala with a new understanding of both the allure and limitations of wealth. After these first steps in the challenge, both boys found themselves reflecting on their experiences. Tunde was beginning to appreciate the value of Emeka's simpler life, seeing how it allowed for deeper relationships and genuine happiness. Emeka, on the other hand, acknowledged that financial stability offered comforts that could make life easier. However, he was troubled by how isolating the pursuit of wealth seemed to be for many of the people he met in Tunde's world. One evening, they met at their usual spot overlooking the town, each sharing their thoughts. Tunde admitted that he felt his life was missing something essential, something that Emeka's family had in abundance: love and connection. Emeka agreed, yet he also expressed a newfound respect for financial security, realizing it could ease some of the burdens his family faced daily. This moment marked a shift in their friendship, as both boys began to recognize the complexity of wealth and the need for balance. To gain more perspective, Tunde and Emeka decided to speak with some of the elders in the town, hoping to learn from those who had lived full lives. They visited Mrs. Okoro, a retired teacher known for her wisdom and gentle spirit. Sitting under the shade of her large mango tree, they asked her about the secret to happiness and whether money played a role. She smiled, sharing stories from her youth, and explained that wealth was only a tool. It could be used to build happiness or to create misery, depending on one's values. She told them that, in her experience, true wealth came from relationships, kindness, and the willingness to help others. Money could make life easier, she admitted, but it could not replace the fulfillment that came from loving and being loved. The boys left with a renewed sense of purpose, realizing that the wisdom of the older generation could guide them on their journey. Each of them was struck by how much Mrs. Okoro's words resonated with what they had already begun to learn through their challenge. Inspired by Mrs. Okoro's words, Tunde decided to practice generosity in a way he hadn't before. He took some of his savings and bought school supplies for children in the poorer parts of town, distributing them anonymously. Emeka accompanied him, watching as Tunde handed out pencils, notebooks, and backpacks to children who received them with joy and gratitude. Tunde was surprised at how fulfilling the experience was. He hadn't realized how much happiness a small act of kindness could bring, not only to the recipients but to himself as well. Emeka, too, was touched by Tunde's gesture, seeing his friend's transformation firsthand. They talked about the value of giving back, agreeing that wealth should be shared and used to uplift others. Emeka found himself more appreciative of Tunde's wealth, understanding that it could be a powerful tool for good. This experience further bonded the friends, deepening their shared understanding of what it truly meant to be rich. They left with a sense of accomplishment and a desire to continue exploring the impact of kindness and generosity. One day, Emeka noticed a classmate struggling with her school fees. Remembering the impact of Tunde's recent act of kindness, Emeka decided to use his meager savings to help her. Though it was a small amount, it was all he had, and the gesture meant the world to his classmate. Tunde was moved by Emeka's selflessness, realizing that true generosity didn't require vast wealth. It was about the willingness to give, even when one had little to spare. This act of kindness only strengthened Tunde's respect for Emeka, who had shown him that wealth wasn't measured in coins and banknotes, but in the love and compassion one had for others. For Emeka, the experience was a reminder of his own family's values. He was proud of his ability to help someone in need, knowing that small acts of kindness could ripple out into the community. Together, the boys marveled at how fulfilling it felt to give back, each of them enriched by the other's perspective. As weeks passed, Tunde and Nkechi's challenge continued to reveal new sides of life, bringing lessons they never expected. Tunde's wealthy friends began to notice his changed lifestyle, questioning his decision to live modestly. Some of them couldn't understand why he'd choose to experience Nkechi's lifestyle, and Tunde felt his social circles shift. Suddenly, he saw a different side to his friends. Some distanced themselves, while others ridiculed his experiment. This made Tunde feel strangely alone, as he realized how shallow some of his relationships were. Nkechi, too, faced challenges as he explored Tunde's world of wealth. Some classmates accused him of selling out and abandoning his roots. Others, who previously treated him as an outsider, were now eager to befriend him, seeing the opportunities he gained by associating with Tunde. Nkechi was uncomfortable with the sudden shift in attention, sensing that these new friends were more interested in Tunde's money than in him. Both friends felt the isolation of these changing dynamics, but they supported each other, bonding even more deeply as they navigated the complexities of social expectations. During a walk through the busy Odede market, Nkechi and Tunde observed vendors selling everything from fresh produce to handmade crafts. They admired the skill and artistry displayed by artisans, particularly a young boy selling intricately woven baskets. Tunde was captivated, struck by the craftsmanship and dedication required to create each piece. Nkechi, noticing his friend's admiration, explained that the young boy was supporting his family, using his skill to earn a living. Tunde marveled at the boy's resilience and work ethic, realizing that wealth was not limited to material abundance but could also be found in talent and hard work. They bought a basket, discussing how the boy's strength was his resourcefulness and talent, which earned him respect in the community. Tunde felt a new appreciation for the vendors who, though not wealthy in traditional terms, demonstrated pride and resilience through their work. The market was bustling, and Nkechi pointed out the various artisans who relied on each other for trade, each bringing unique skills. Tunde started to understand that wealth was deeply tied to community, skill, and the ability to contribute meaningfully, whether one was rich or poor. One sunny afternoon, the boys went for a walk through a nearby forest. Nkechi pointed out various plants and herbs his mother used in her remedies, explaining how the earth provided everything they needed for health and well-being. Tunde was fascinated. He had always relied on modern medicine, unaware of the natural resources that surrounded him. Nkechi shared stories of his family's reliance on nature, and how, for generations, they had understood the land's gifts. Tunde was struck by the simplicity of it all, realizing that Nkechi's family had their own form of wealth in their connection to nature and self-sufficiency. The experience humbled Tunde, who had never truly appreciated nature's abundance. As they walked back, he reflected on how his own family's money sometimes created a separation from such natural wisdom. The forest walk brought them closer, as both boys began to see wealth in a new light, something that could be found even in the simple, beautiful balance of nature. As the challenge progressed, Nkechi saw Tunde's family in a new light. Though they were affluent, they often seemed disconnected from one another, each preoccupied with individual pursuits. Tunde's father was frequently away on business. His mother hosted social gatherings, and Tunde was often left to his own devices. Nkechi noticed a quiet loneliness in Tunde's household, realizing how different it was from his own bustling, noisy home, where his family shared everything: their struggles, meals, and joys. One evening, Nkechi gently suggested to Tunde that wealth might mean spending more time together as a family. Tunde initially felt defensive, but later that night, he thought about his friend's words. He realized that, despite their money, there was a lack of warmth in his home, something he had always craved but never quite articulated. This new understanding planted a seed in Tunde's heart, sparking a desire to strengthen his family ties and redefine what family wealth meant. Tunde's mother noticed the changes in her son and invited Nkechi over for dinner, curious to meet the boy who had such an influence on Tunde. Nkechi's natural warmth and humility won her over instantly, and they spent the evening laughing and sharing stories. Tunde's mother was surprised at how relaxed Tunde seemed in Nkechi's presence, as though a weight had been lifted. Nkechi shared insights about his own family's practices, discussing how they celebrated small wins and supported one another even through difficult times. Impressed, Tunde's mother began to reflect on her family's interactions, realizing that wealth had sometimes created distance between them. She encouraged Tunde to spend more time with Emeka, sensing that his influence was positive. Emeka's visit marked a turning point, as Tunde's family slowly started to come together more often. Inspired by Emeka's family values, Tunde's mother began to seek ways to bring warmth back into their home, marking the start of a positive transformation. Emeka's parents, too, noticed how their son's friendship with Tunde was changing him, bringing new perspectives and dreams. They invited Tunde for a family meal, cooking their best dishes and welcoming him with open arms. Tunde was humbled by their hospitality, feeling like a true member of the family. Emeka's father shared stories of his work as a carpenter, describing the pride he took in his craft despite the physical toll it took on him. Tunde was deeply moved, especially when Emeka's father spoke of the satisfaction he felt in providing for his family. This experience, so different from the gatherings Tunde's family hosted, was intimate and filled with love. Tunde found himself longing for the closeness Emeka shared with his parents. As he left, he felt a newfound respect for Emeka's family and the happiness they found in togetherness. It dawned on him that wealth could be as simple as a loving family meal. After experiencing each other's lives, both boys began to reflect on their newfound understanding of wealth. They realized that material possessions and financial security, while important, were only pieces of the larger puzzle. Tunde saw the value in simplicity, in appreciating the things money couldn't buy, like family, friendship, and resilience. Emeka, meanwhile, recognized the benefits of financial stability, seeing how it could offer comfort and security, but only if it didn't replace the essentials of love and connection. Their shared journey brought a maturity to their friendship, strengthening the bond that held them together. They acknowledged that their definitions of wealth had grown more complex, influenced by each other's lives and the wisdom of the people around them. They decided to keep the challenge going, each pushing to better understand and balance the different aspects of life they had explored. Their resolve was firm. They would seek a wealth that could bring them true happiness and fulfillment. As the days unfolded, Tunde became a fixture at Emeka's family home. Despite their humble surroundings, Emeka's family welcomed him as if he were one of their own. He helped Emeka's mother prepare meals, learning how she stretched every ingredient to feed her children. It was during one of these cooking sessions that Emeka's mother, Mama Ada, took Tunde aside, wiping her hands on her faded apron. "Money is like a fire, Tunde," she said, her voice warm but serious. "In the right hands, it can light up a home, cook a meal, and bring people together. But in the wrong hands, it burns and leaves nothing but ash." Her words lingered in Tunde's mind. He was used to thinking of money as a tool for power, convenience, and comfort. Now he saw it as something with a soul of its own, something that could either unite or destroy. Emeka watched his friend closely, noticing the transformation in his expression. Tunde's appreciation for Emeka's family deepened, and so did his understanding of his own family. They might have had material wealth, but he now saw how little fire it had truly brought to his life. This realization made him more determined than ever to seek the kind of wealth that would warm his soul. One evening, Emeka surprised Tunde with a plan. They would spend the day helping the elderly in their community. At first, Tunde wasn't sure what to expect, but he trusted Emeka. They started by visiting a widow, Mama Kike, who lived alone in a small, aging hut. She greeted them with a wide, toothless grin, overjoyed by the unexpected company. As they cleaned her yard, fetched water from the well, and repaired a leaking part of her roof, Tunde was struck by how little she had and yet how happy she seemed. Mama Kike spoke of her life with laughter and joy, sharing stories of her youth and the memories she had gathered over the years. Her gratitude filled Tunde with an unexpected warmth. He realized that kindness, especially toward those often forgotten, carried a value beyond any currency. When they left, Tunde felt a deep sense of fulfillment he had never felt from his privileged life. Emeka, noticing his friend's wonder, gave him a knowing smile. "Sometimes, Tunde, wealth isn't what we have. It's what we give." Tunde's respect for Emeka grew, and his heart began to swell with the seeds of kindness planted by the people of Odede. The next day, Tunde and Nkechi decided to visit the village square, where a festival was taking place. Drums beat in a rhythm that pulsed through their veins, the voices of the dancers rising in joyful song. Tunde had been to fancy parties with crystal chandeliers and live bands, but nothing compared to this. The laughter, the stamping of feet in the red dust, and the voices of people who danced like they were one heartbeat. Under the starlit sky, the two friends joined the dance. Nkechi laughed as Tunde tried to follow the quick, intricate steps, but soon Tunde caught the rhythm. He realized that this was more than a dance. It was a celebration of life, of struggle, of joy, and of unity. This dance, so different from the restrained, quiet celebrations he knew, filled him with a powerful feeling of belonging. As they swayed and stomped to the music, Tunde felt his heart expand. He looked at Nkechi, who was laughing freely, and for the first time, he truly understood the wealth of community. He saw how each dancer brought something unique, how the music grew stronger with every voice, every step. This was a wealth he could never find in his father's world, a wealth of spirit, shared among friends, family, and strangers alike. One morning, Nkechi took Tunde on a journey to his uncle's farm. The land sprawled endlessly, green and fertile, with rows of maize, cassava, and yam. Nkechi explained that his uncle used to work in the city but returned to Odede to cultivate his family's land, believing that his true wealth lay in the soil. As they worked alongside Nkechi's uncle, digging and planting under the hot sun, Tunde marveled at the connection Nkechi's family had to the land. Nkechi's uncle spoke of the patience and wisdom required to grow food, comparing it to the patience needed to cultivate love and friendship. Tunde felt a deep respect for the land and the farmers who depended on it. That night, as they ate roasted corn by the fire, Nkechi's uncle shared tales of seasons past, of rains and droughts, and how the people of Odede had always endured. Tunde realized that wealth was not only about what one could accumulate. It was also about resilience, strength, and the ability to adapt and persevere. The land, he thought, was a silent teacher, one that offered riches beyond what money could buy. While the challenge continued, Tunde found himself drawn to Nkechi, Nkechi's beautiful cousin. She had a quiet strength and a warm smile that lit up her face. Nkechi was kind-hearted and caring, helping her family and neighbors without a second thought. Tunde, who was used to people admiring him for his wealth, found himself wanting to impress her, though he didn't know how. One evening, he confessed his feelings to Nkechi, who chuckled knowingly. Nkechi isn't impressed by money, Tunde. She's looking for someone with a good heart. This was another revelation for Tunde, who realized he had spent much of his life trying to use his wealth to gain approval and admiration. Inspired, he decided to show Nkechi his newfound values. He began to help out around the village more, participating in community events and volunteering his time. Nkechi noticed the change, and one evening as they watched the sunset together, she smiled, saying, "You have a good heart, Tunde. That's the real wealth." Her words echoed in Tunde's soul, and for the first time, he felt genuinely seen, not for his money but for the person he was becoming. In the quiet of the night, Tunde lay awake, reflecting on the past few months. He thought of the lives he had touched, the laughter he had shared, and the lessons he had learned. He no longer cared about the luxury he had left behind. Instead, he was consumed by a sense of purpose and fulfillment he had never known before. As he lay there, he realized that his understanding of wealth had been profoundly reshaped. Nkechi, the people of Odede, and even the challenges he had faced had shown him that wealth was not just measured in currency. It was in kindness, resilience, and the love that connected people. He felt gratitude for Nkechi, whose unwavering friendship had guided him on this journey. With this realization, Tunde made a silent vow to carry these values forward, even after the challenge ended. He understood that his life would never be the same and that he now had a mission, to bring the warmth of Odede back to his family and to transform the wealth he had into something meaningful. As he drifted into sleep, he felt a quiet peace, knowing he had found the true path to happiness. As the challenge neared its end, Tunde couldn't ignore the impact that Odede had made on him. He started imagining ways he could give back to the community that had opened his eyes to the true essence of wealth. One evening, he approached Emeka with an idea. "What if I start a program to support the young artisans and farmers in Odede?" he asked, excitement in his voice. Emeka's eyes widened, but he smiled thoughtfully. "That would be incredible, Tunde. But remember, the community must feel it's theirs, not a gift from an outsider." Tunde nodded, understanding that he couldn't impose his wealth on Odede. He needed to create something that empowered the people rather than simply providing for them. Tunde spent the night planning, envisioning a small community center where young people could learn skills to sustain themselves, from farming techniques to basket weaving. He imagined bringing in teachers who could share knowledge and resources. Tunde felt a thrill in his heart, the kind he'd never felt spending his father's money. This was a wealth that mattered, one that could uplift and unite. With Emeka's guidance, Tunde crafted a proposal that would involve the community from the very beginning. They would choose what the center would focus on, ensuring it met the needs of the people. For Tunde, this was more than a project. It was a way to honor everything he had learned in Odede. As Tunde shared his plans with his family, he found himself nervous. He knew his father might dismiss the idea, seeing it as a waste of time and money. But to his surprise, his mother was intrigued. She had noticed the changes in her son, the newfound humility, the warmth he now exuded. Tunde's father, however, scoffed. "A community center, and in some small village. Tunde, this isn't the way to make an impact. You're wasting your potential." Tunde took a deep breath, feeling a familiar frustration rise within him. But he was determined to stand his ground. "Father, I've learned that true wealth isn't only about power or luxury. It's about building something meaningful, something that changes lives." His father stared at him, clearly unconvinced. But his mother stepped in, her voice calm yet firm. Maybe this is exactly what Tunde needs to do. Her support gave Tunde the strength he needed, and he continued to share his vision, hoping his father might eventually understand. Although his father remained doubtful, Tunde felt his mother's encouragement, knowing he had at least one family member on his side. Nkechi had become a constant source of encouragement for Tunde, offering him both advice and comfort. She shared his passion for the community and reminded him of the small joys that came from simple acts of kindness. One evening, as they walked by the river, Nkechi took his hand, her face serious. "Odede needs people who believe in it, Tunde. And you, someone who wasn't born here, might be the one to make others see its potential." Her words resonated deeply with him. She saw his project not as charity, but as a partnership with the people of Odede, a chance to bring out the best in everyone. Tunde felt an overwhelming gratitude for Nkechi's faith in him. She was becoming more than a friend. She was his compass, guiding him to understand his own purpose. In that quiet moment by the river, Tunde realized he loved her. And this love was different. It was rooted not in wealth or convenience, but in respect, shared dreams, and the strength to face life's challenges together. Tunde knew that for his project to succeed, he needed the trust and respect of Odede's elders. Emeka's father arranged a meeting with the village leaders, and Tunde prepared to present his ideas. As he stood before them in the small gathering hall, he felt nervous, aware that these men held years of wisdom and experience. He spoke passionately about his vision, explaining that he wanted the community center to be a place where the village's traditions could flourish, while also offering young people the chance to learn new skills. He emphasized that he was not there to impose change but to support the community's growth. The elders listened quietly, their expressions thoughtful. After he finished, one of the leaders spoke. "Your heart seems pure, young Tunde. But remember, Odede's strength lies in its unity. If you truly wish to help, you must walk this path with us, not ahead of us." Tunde nodded, humbled. He realized that his success depended on his willingness to learn and adapt. The elders' words reminded him that true wealth was found in humility and patience. Winning the elders' trust was just the beginning. Over the next weeks, Tunde immersed himself in the life of the village. He worked alongside farmers, mended roofs, and joined in every community event. The villagers were skeptical at first, but gradually they warmed to him, seeing his genuine desire to understand and help. One day, while helping Emika's uncle in the fields, an elderly woman approached Tund, her eyes kind but curious. "Are you here to stay, or will you leave us as soon as you find something more valuable?" she asked. Her question struck a chord. Tund realized that he couldn't just dip in and out of Odede's life. He needed to fully commit if he wanted to make a lasting impact. "I'm here to stay, Mama," he replied sincerely. "Odede has become my home." The woman smiled, patting his shoulder. From that day, the village embraced him even more, trusting that he was there not as a visitor, but as one of their own. With the trust of the elders and the support of the villagers, Tund's community center began to take shape. Local artisans, farmers, and teachers volunteered their time, sharing their skills with the younger generation. Tund felt a profound satisfaction as he watched children learn from elders, laughter filling the air as they tried their hands at pottery, weaving, and farming. Nkechi often joined him at the center, helping with the planning and organizing. The villagers began to call her Mama Nkechi, a term of respect that filled her with pride. She became a pillar of the community, her kindness and wisdom making her beloved by all. Watching her, Tund knew he had found not just a partner in his project, but a partner in life. The center became a symbol of hope for Odede, a place where tradition met progress. Tund marveled at how the project had grown beyond his original vision, evolving into something that truly belonged to the people. It was a wealth he could never have imagined before, the wealth of unity, purpose, and shared dreams. One afternoon, Tund's father arrived unannounced in Odede. He had heard of his son's project, and curiosity drove him to see what Tund had been building. Tund welcomed his father with mixed emotions, both excited to share his achievements and anxious about his father's opinion. As they walked through the village, Tund explained the purpose of the community center, introducing his father to the artisans and farmers who were now his friends. His father listened quietly, watching his son interact with the villagers, noticing the warmth and respect they showed him. In the evening, Tund's father joined the family for a modest meal. He was visibly moved by the simplicity and warmth of the gathering, so different from the lavish but often lonely dinners he was used to. Later, as they sat outside, he turned to Tund. "I didn't understand before, but now I see it, son. You found something real here, something I could never buy for you." Tund felt a surge of relief and gratitude. For the first time, he felt his father's pride, not for his wealth or accomplishments, but for the person he had become. It was a moment of healing, bridging the gap between them, and Tund knew his journey had come full circle. Weeks after his father's visit, a severe storm swept through Odede, leaving destruction in its wake. Homes were damaged, crops destroyed, and the community center itself suffered from flooding. Tund and Emika worked tirelessly alongside the villagers, helping repair what they could. Amid the chaos, Tund saw how tightly the community pulled together, each person lending a hand to help their neighbor. For Tund, the storm was a test, pushing him to his limits physically and emotionally. He spent hours repairing roofs, carrying supplies, and comforting those who had lost their homes. Exhausted, he looked at Emika, who was as resilient as ever, pushing through the hard work with a steady determination. Tund realized that Emika was not just his friend but his brother in spirit, bound by the experiences they'd shared and the dreams they now pursued together. After days of repairs, the community gathered to celebrate their resilience, sharing food and laughter under the open sky. It was a reminder that, despite the hardships, the people of Odede were rich in unity and strength. Tund felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, realizing that this bond, formed through struggle and support, was the truest form of wealth he had ever known. The challenges of rebuilding after the storm had left a lasting impact on Tund. He felt himself shifting, embracing an identity that felt more connected to Odede than to the life he'd known before. When he walked through the village, people greeted him with familiarity, treating him as one of their own. Children ran up to him, tugging at his shirt, calling him Uncle Tund, their laughter filling the air. Nkechi noticed the change in him too. She often caught him gazing out over the fields, his expression thoughtful and content. One evening, as they watched the sunset, she placed her hand on his shoulder. "You found yourself here, haven't you?" she asked, her voice soft and full of pride. Tunde nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. "I have," he replied. "Odede has given me a purpose, a home, and a family." For the first time, he felt whole, no longer driven by the need to prove himself or accumulate wealth. He had found a different kind of richness in the land, the people, and in Nkechi's unwavering love. With his sense of identity firmly rooted in Odede, Tunde felt ready to take the next step with Nkechi. He wanted to build a life with her, sharing both his heart and his dreams. One quiet evening, as they walked by the river, Tunde took her hand, his heart racing. "Nkechi," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "You've been my anchor, my guide. You showed me what it means to love without conditions, to build without taking." He paused, gathering his courage. "Will you marry me?" Nkechi looked at him, her eyes shining with tears. She nodded, a joyful smile spreading across her face. "Yes, Tunde, I will." They embraced, their laughter and tears mingling as the stars blinked to life above them. It was a simple proposal, witnessed only by the river and the night sky. Yet it was perfect. As they walked back to the village, hand in hand, Tunde felt a profound sense of peace. He was no longer the young man who sought fulfillment in wealth. He was a man who had found it in love, community, and purpose. He knew that this was the life he wanted, a life filled with meaning, rooted in the heart of Odede. When word of Tunde and Nkechi's engagement spread, the village erupted in celebration. Preparations began immediately, with every family contributing food, decorations, and music. It was more than just a wedding. It was a testament to the bond between Tunde and the people of Odede, a bond built on mutual respect and love. The day of the wedding was a vibrant explosion of color and sound. Women dressed in brightly colored wrappers, men wore their finest igbadas, and children ran around with flowers in their hands. The ceremony was simple but filled with heartfelt traditions, each one symbolizing the unity and commitment of the couple. Emeka stood by Tunde's side as his best man, beaming with pride. As Tunde looked into Nkechi's eyes, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Here, in the heart of Odede, surrounded by the people who had become his family, he knew he had found his true wealth. It was a wealth not counted in coins, but in moments, in connections, and in a future built on love and understanding. Shortly after the wedding, Tunde received an unexpected letter from his father, inviting him to visit the city. His father expressed a desire to reconnect, to understand more about Tunde's journey and the choices he had made. Though Tunde felt apprehensive, he knew this was an opportunity to bridge the gap between his old life and his new one. With Nkechi by his side, Tunde returned to the city, where he was greeted by his family's grandeur and luxury. But he no longer felt the same pull toward the lavish surroundings. Instead, he felt grounded, anchored by the love and simplicity he had found in Odede. His father watched him closely, noting the calm confidence in his son's eyes. Over dinner, Tunde shared stories of his life in Odede, of the community center, the people, and the love he had found. His father listened, his expression softening. By the end of the evening, he nodded approvingly. "I may not understand everything you've done, but I can see it's given you something real," he admitted. Tunde felt a weight lift from his shoulders, sensing the beginning of a reconciliation that could unite his past and his present. Back in Odede, Tunde and Nkechi began working on a new initiative, a bridge between the village and the city. Tunde envisioned a program where the youth of Odede could visit the city to learn, to see the world beyond their village, but also to return and enrich their community with their newfound knowledge. It was a bold plan, one that would require resources and trust. With Emeka's help, they reached out to leaders in the city, gathering support from those who believed in the project's potential. Slowly, they built a network of mentors, educators, and donors who were inspired by Tunde's vision of blending tradition with modernity, creating a future that respected the past but was unafraid of progress. The program became a beacon of hope, not just for Odede but for neighboring villages. Young people returned with skills and ideas, their minds open to new possibilities, yet their hearts firmly rooted in their heritage. It was the legacy Tunde had always wanted, a way to give back to the land and people that had given him everything. Years passed, and Odede transformed, with the community center thriving and the exchange program bringing fresh energy to the village. Tunde and Nkechi's family grew, their children running through the same fields where their parents had once found love. Emeka remained Tunde's closest friend, and together, they continued to nurture Odede's growth, blending the wisdom of the past with the opportunities of the future. On his 50th birthday, Tunde stood in the center of the village, surrounded by friends, family, and the next generation of Odede's youth. The villagers presented him with a gift, a hand-carved sculpture symbolizing unity and resilience, a testament to everything they had built together. Looking at the faces around him, Tunde felt a deep, enduring gratitude. He had found the answer to the question that had started it all. True wealth was not a measure of one's possessions but of one's contributions, one's relationships, and one's legacy. Odede had taught him this, and in return, he had given his life to the land and the people who had made him whole. As he gazed out over the fields, with Nkechi and his children by his side, Tunde felt an unshakable peace. He had become truly rich, not in the ways of the world, but in the ways that mattered most. The years following the success of Tunde's community center and the youth exchange program were filled with growth. Odede was no longer just a small village. It was becoming a hub for knowledge and culture. Young men and women who had once looked to the city for their future were now proud of their roots, eager to stay and contribute to their home. Tunde and Nkechi's vision had come to fruition in ways they hadn't fully imagined. The community center not only housed workshops and classrooms but was also a gathering space for cultural events, where stories of Odede's past were told alongside modern innovations. It was a place where both old and young learned from each other, blending the wisdom of generations. One afternoon, as Tunde walked through the center, watching a group of teenagers learning how to plant new crops, he was filled with pride. They were learning the same skills their grandparents had used to sustain the village, but now they were doing so with new tools and techniques. This fusion of tradition and progress was exactly what Tunde had envisioned years ago. "Look at them," Nkechi said, joining him. "They don't realize how much they owe to what we've built." Tunde smiled, nodding. "They owe everything to the village, to the land, and to each other. We're just the bridges that connect them." Nkechi had always been his steady partner, and now, as they stood together, they could see the legacy of their hard work taking shape before their eyes. Their children ran past them, laughing, and Tunde's heart swelled. This was the future they had dreamed of. One day, as Tunde sat in the village's open-air hall, a familiar face appeared at the edge of the crowd. It was Chuka, Tunde's cousin, who had once left Odede in search of fortune and success in the city. Tunde hadn't seen him in years, and his arrival was unexpected. Chuka had become a wealthy businessman, owning a chain of successful companies, but his eyes, once filled with ambition, now looked tired, even troubled. He made his way over to Tunde, his face showing signs of exhaustion. "I've come back, Tunde. I'm lost," Chuka confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Tunde studied him for a moment, then smiled warmly. "Welcome home, Chuka. Odede has a way of showing people what truly matters." Chuka sat down beside him, shaking his head. "I had everything: money, power, status. But I've never felt truly happy. I thought success in the city would make me fulfilled, but it only left me empty." Tunde nodded, understanding exactly what Chuka was going through. "You're not the first to come back here like this," Tunde said gently. "But this village teaches us that happiness isn't something you chase. It's something you build with those around you." Chuka listened intently, his expression thoughtful. He had come to realize that the life he had worked so hard to build was not the one that would bring him peace. Over the next few weeks, Chuka stayed in Odede, spending time with Tunde and his family. The more he immersed himself in the village's way of life, the more he began to change. He helped with the farming, attended village meetings, and became involved in the new generation's education programs. The transformation was slow but undeniable. Chuka, the once aloof and detached businessman, had begun to understand the value of hard work, community, and humility. One evening, as Chuka sat by the fire with the elders, he asked for their wisdom. What makes Odede so special? Why does it seem like everything here is in perfect harmony? The elder's eyes twinkled as he responded, because we understand that the land gives us what we need, and in return we give back to it. We don't take more than we need, and we share what we have with others. Chuka sat quietly, reflecting on these words. He had spent years accumulating wealth in the city, yet he had never felt the peace that surrounded him now. He began to understand that the greatest wealth wasn't measured by the size of his bank account, but by the strength of his relationships and his connection to the land and the people. Chuka's transformation was not just personal. He brought a new vision for the future of Odede. With his business acumen and the wisdom he had gained from the villagers, he suggested they expand the youth program further, creating partnerships with nearby towns and cities to help young people from Odede access opportunities in various industries. Chuka offered to sponsor scholarships for the brightest students in the village, helping them attend schools and universities in the city. Tunde and Nkechi were initially hesitant, worried that such programs might disrupt the village's tight-knit community. But after much discussion, they realized that education and opportunity didn't have to come at the expense of tradition. Instead, they could empower the youth of Odede to leave, learn, and return with new skills that could help the village grow even more. Odede is not just about staying here, Tunde said. It's about going out and coming back, sharing what you've learned. That's the future I see for us. The partnership with Chuka marked a turning point for the village. Odede was no longer a place where people stayed stagnant. It was a place where people grew, prospered, and returned home, just like Tunde and Chuka had. As the village continued to flourish, Tunde and Nkechi's love grew stronger. They had built not only a family but also a future together, one that was grounded in love, trust, and a shared vision. Tunde often thought back to the time when he had challenged himself to find what made a person truly rich. He had learned that wealth wasn't just material, it was the connections you made, the love you gave, and the community you helped build. One evening, as Tunde and Nkechi walked along the river, they stopped to admire the sunset, just as they had so many years ago. Do you remember when we first came here, when everything felt so uncertain? Tunde asked. Nkechi nodded, squeezing his hand. I remember. But I also remember how we found something stronger than uncertainty. Our love and our commitment to each other. Tunde smiled, looking out over the village that had given him everything. I've found true wealth, Nkechi, he said softly. It's in you, in this village, and in the life we've built. Nkechi kissed his cheek, her heart full of pride. Together, they had built something far more valuable than wealth, something that would last for generations to come. Years passed, and Tunde and Nkechi watched as their children grew into young adults, ready to take on the world. Their eldest son, now a graduate of university, was eager to return to Odede and contribute to the community, just as his father had. Tunde knew that it was time for him to step back and allow the next generation to lead. The village celebrated Tunde and Nkechi's legacy with a grand ceremony, honoring all they had done to transform Odede into the thriving community it had become. Tunde stood at the front, watching as the torch was passed to the younger generation. His heart swelled with pride as he saw how far the village had come, how much it had grown, and how the seeds he had planted were now blossoming into a future that would be even brighter. I never thought I'd see this day, Tunde said, his voice thick with emotion. But I'm proud of the life we've created, of the community we've built. The wealth we've found is in the hearts of these people, in the work we've done together. As Tunde and Nkechi watched their children lead the village forward, they knew that Odede's future was in good hands. They had created a legacy that would last, a legacy built on love, community, and the understanding that true wealth was not something you held, it was something you gave. As the years passed, the village of Odede grew even stronger, becoming a model of sustainable living and community-centered growth. Tunde and Nkechi's children, along with the new generation of leaders, began to take charge of the village's development. Their oldest son, Akin, was particularly passionate about bringing technological innovations to Odede while preserving its rich traditions. Akin, who had studied engineering in the city, was eager to combine his technical knowledge with the community values that had shaped his upbringing. He proposed building a solar-powered water system for the village, one that would ensure access to clean water for everyone without relying on traditional methods that had drained the land. Tunde, proud of his son's vision, supported the idea, and together they rallied the village to begin the project. As the construction of the water system began, Akin worked closely with engineers and local villagers, teaching them how to maintain the system long after the project was completed. The sense of unity that had always been present in Odede was evident again as the community worked together to ensure a brighter, sustainable future for generations to come. One day, a group of bandits attempted to raid Odede, hoping to steal the village's growing resources. The community had always been peaceful, and their collective strength was not one often tested by violence. But when the threat emerged, it was not the warriors or elders who rose to defend the village. It was a young girl named Ifeoma. Ifeoma, the daughter of a farmer, had spent her childhood learning about the land and its ways. When the bandits arrived, she had been working in the fields, and her first instinct was to protect the crops and the children. Armed only with the knowledge of the land and her quick thinking, she led the villagers in setting up strategic defenses, using the thick forests and hidden paths to her advantage. By the time the local authorities arrived to handle the situation, Ifeoma's quick wit and bravery had already sent the bandits fleeing. She became a local hero, symbolizing the courage that ran through the veins of Odede. Tunde, who had never expected such an event to occur, couldn't help but marvel at the strength of the community's spirit. As Odede continued to flourish, a new challenge arose. The government, in an effort to modernize rural areas, proposed a large-scale industrial development project nearby. The plan was to build factories that would provide jobs but also disrupt the quiet agricultural life the villagers had known for generations. The villagers were divided on the issue. Some saw it as an opportunity for economic growth, while others feared it would lead to the destruction of their way of life. Tunde, now an elder and respected leader in the village, called a meeting to discuss the issue. He knew this was a critical moment for Odede. The decision would either protect the village's traditions or change its very fabric forever. At the meeting, voices were raised, each side passionately presenting their case. Akin spoke in favor of progress, suggesting that the village could adopt new technologies while still preserving its agricultural roots. Emeka, now a wise elder himself, cautioned against the environmental damage that such development could bring. In the end, Tunde reminded the villagers that they must find a middle ground, where the benefits of progress didn't outweigh the things they held dear. The decision was made to carefully vet the development project, ensuring that it would respect the land and the community's values while still bringing in the economic opportunities they needed. As the years passed, Tunde and Nkechi continued to watch their children and grandchildren flourish in a community that valued both tradition and progress. The solar-powered water system, the education programs, and the businesses that had sprung up in Odede all provided a sense of security and hope for the future. Akin, now a young man with a growing family, took over many of the responsibilities of village leadership. His work had made Odede one of the most innovative and sustainable rural communities in the region. His wife, Ifeoma, became a respected leader in the village, using her bravery and leadership to teach the younger generation the value of courage and resilience. Tunde and Nkechi, who had seen their community evolve and prosper, knew that their time was coming to an end, but they were at peace. They had passed on the torch of leadership, and the village was in good hands. They spent their final years together in the home they had built, surrounded by children and grandchildren, content in the knowledge that Odede's future was secure. Tunde's health began to decline slowly. He had lived a full and rich life, and though he had seen his children grow into strong, capable leaders, the weight of age had begun to take its toll. On his final night, he and Nkechi sat by the river, just as they had so many years ago. The village was peaceful, and the sky above was filled with stars. "I'm ready," Tunde whispered, his hand resting on Nkechi's. "I've seen everything I needed to see. Odede is in good hands." Nkechi, ever by his side, nodded, though her heart ached at the thought of losing him. "You've given us everything, Tund. Your legacy will live on in this village, in our children, and in the land we love." With a final breath, Tund passed away quietly, surrounded by the village he had helped build. His funeral was a grand celebration of his life, filled with music, dancing, and the stories of how he had transformed Odede from a small village into a beacon of hope and progress. He was buried beneath a large baobab tree, symbolizing his strength and his enduring connection to the land. After Tund's passing, Nkechi took on a more active role in guiding the community. Though she mourned the loss of her husband, she knew that her work wasn't done. She had witnessed firsthand the resilience of Odede, and now she would help guide the village through the next phase of its growth. Her leadership was soft but firm, and the people trusted her deeply. She continued to work with Akin and the younger generation, ensuring that Tund's vision of progress rooted in community was realized. Under her leadership, Odede thrived, with education, healthcare, and sustainability programs growing even more. Nkechi never remarried, choosing instead to dedicate her life to the village Tund had loved so much. Her strength became legendary in Odede, and her name was spoken with reverence by the community she had nurtured. Akin, Tunde and Nkechi's son, took on the mantle of leadership with humility and vision. He continued his father's work, but with his own ideas. The industrial project, which had once divided the community, was now an opportunity to create eco-friendly industries that would preserve the land while providing jobs. The youth of Odede, inspired by the community's transformation, eagerly took on new roles as both farmers and entrepreneurs. Akin also worked closely with Emeka, Tund's best friend and the elder of the village, who had been instrumental in guiding the younger generation. Together, they ensured that Odede remained a place where people lived in harmony with the land, where prosperity was shared, and where the youth were encouraged to build their futures while honoring their past. With Akin at the helm, Odede entered a new era. The village was not just surviving, it was thriving. The solar-powered water systems were expanded to neighboring villages, and Odede became a regional leader in sustainability. The education programs Tund had started were now influencing the broader region, with young people from surrounding towns coming to Odede to learn. The new generation of Odede's youth, who had grown up in the shadow of their parents' hard work, began to spread their wings. They sought careers in agriculture, technology, health, and the arts. They also began to form connections with other communities, sharing the values of Odede with the world. Akin, now a man of wisdom and responsibility, often walked the village at dusk, watching the sun set over the fields. The sounds of children laughing and elders telling stories filled the air. He knew that the legacy of his family, of Tunde and Nkechi, would live on forever. Odede had become more than a village. It was a symbol of resilience, unity, and progress. The heart of Odede lay not in its physical wealth but in its people, its love, and its unwavering commitment to preserving the values that had guided Tunde, Nkechi, and their community. As Akin stood in the center of the village, surrounded by the generations that had shaped its destiny, he realized that the true wealth of Odede was its spirit. It wasn't something that could be measured, but something that could only be felt by those who lived and breathed its air. The story of Odede had come full circle. From a small village where two best friends challenged each other to find true wealth, to a thriving, progressive community where love, family, and tradition met modernity, Odede stood as a testament to what could be achieved when people worked together with purpose and vision. Akin's children, now young adults, were eager to begin their own legacies. They had been raised with the values of Odede, but they were determined to add their unique contributions. The village, though prosperous, was still grounded in its agricultural roots. But the next generation saw new possibilities in technology and green energy. Akin, now an elder, supported their dreams. He knew that just as Odede had grown under Tunde and Nkechi's leadership, it would continue to flourish under the vision of the youth. He believed that the future of Odede lay in balancing tradition with innovation. It was time for the new generation to lead. Tunde's grandchildren, all of whom had received education and traveled the world, returned home to contribute to the family's legacy. Akin's daughter, Chidinma, who had studied environmental science, was particularly passionate about the preservation of Odede's natural resources. Together, the new leaders of Odede worked to create a more sustainable future for their people. They launched projects to reforest the land, restore wildlife, and protect the soil. The combination of youth and wisdom turned Odede into an even greater beacon of hope in the region. The dream Tunde and Nkechi had nurtured for so long had finally been realized. The village of Odede was no longer just a peaceful rural area. It was a thriving community where people from all over came to learn how to live sustainably and harmoniously. Tunde's vision of true wealth, grounded in love and community, had come to fruition. As the sun set on another peaceful day, Akin stood at the top of the hill overlooking Odede, reflecting on the journey his family had taken. It had been a long road, but one that had been worth every step. The village was thriving, and its future was secure. Tunde's legacy had not only been about wealth or success, it had been about building something greater than himself. It had been about love, community, and respect for the land. His children, and now his grandchildren, continued to live by those principles. Odede had become a living testament to the power of family and community. As Akin looked around at his people, he knew that Odede's future would continue to be shaped by the values of those who had come before him. The circle of life in Odede would continue, passing from one generation to the next. Tunde's life had been a journey of transformation. From a young man seeking to understand what made someone truly rich to a wise elder who had built a legacy of love, community, and sustainability, Tunde's story was one of hope, perseverance, and the enduring strength of human connection. As the sun set on the final chapter of his life, Odede stood strong, a village where love was the currency, and the wealth of the heart was more valuable than anything money could buy. And as long as Odede existed, Tunde's spirit would live on in the hearts of its people.